And this is Poets in Conversation, Aperture and Poetry. And I will go ahead and pass it over to you, Dan. I believe you are speaking first.
Hi, thank you for those introductions, Jen. Good to be here with Chingy. I think Chingy and I are on the same time zone, which is on the East Coast. I'm currently in Pittsburgh, where I live and work, which is on the unceded ancestral lands of the indigenous peoples, the Lenni Lenape, Shawnee, and Haudenosaunee. Yeah, so we're very sad to miss on not having Claudia here, but glad that she's taking care of herself, and we'll send her some well wishes for a full return to her full self. I think it's so important not to force yourself to do stuff, even when there's a scheduled event, because the body doesn't always adhere to timelines and such. So I think that's important to notice and remember for ourselves. Okay, so Aperture and Poetry. I was going to talk a little bit, and both Chingy and I will be sharing our screens, not only because of how things might look on a page, but also just kind of for accessibility so you can follow along. It's just kind of nice to have the words there in front of you, especially on a Zoom format, because, Zoom is kind of such a static vacuum. So I'm really drawn to the word aperture, not only for its use in photography, and I work primarily or more recently with photographs, especially photographs from my family archive, but I'm also really fascinated by the idea of the aperture as being, and forgive me, I'm not like a photography dork, so I don't know like all the lens and like the F numbers, on lenses and stuff. Like I don't know that stuff, but I love thinking about long exposures, right? And that's when you keep your aperture open in a camera for much longer than normal. Like for example, I think in the olden times, back when, they had gigantic apparatuses or apparati that were cameras, they would have people hold still for 30 minutes, and that's how you got your portrait taken. Who can hold still? I mean, I guess that's also how they did the paintings of portraits of people. But I'm fascinated in that 30 minutes, say, when an aperture is open and capturing, right, what it sees before it. All these little things are occurring, right? Wind is blowing, insects are flying through, a person is blinking, and that may or may not get captured on the record of the photographic image. But I love to think about what are all the other things that enter through, which aren't always detected or made visible. And more recently, I've been doing a lot of reading about sound, and sound specifically because we are a species that privileges sight first and foremost. And I've been really trying purposefully to not rely on sight. So I'll go to spaces, like for example, actually, I was in Washington State near Oysterville, in like by Willapa Bay, on the Washington coast. And I would just go to the nature reserve at the top of the peninsula and just sit for hours and like keep my eyes closed. I also have like one of the sleeping masks, and it's safe. Like I guess there's a cougar around, but I wasn't worried about a cougar in the middle of the day. And I like to think of the aperture of the ear, which is to say our ears can never close. We can close our eyes to shut out, right, the world, but we can't shut up our ears, especially if we are born with full ability to hear. And there's a way in which our ears are constantly filtering what it hears, and it's constantly listening for things that are unfamiliar, because then we become like heightened towards danger, right, and difference. So I've been thinking a lot about the aperture of the ear, and so I'll read a sequence that kind of relates to what I heard while I was on that peninsula. And so this is kind of a long-winded way of just talking about my process and thinking about aperture and how I translate it into my own form of poetics. So I'm just going to read two pieces, and I'm so excited to hear from Chingy. And just my favorite part is really just talking to another person. So I'm going to read two pieces. The first one, I guess I can share my screen now. So the first one is a revisitation of the Familial archive. And every anniversary of my brother's death, which happens in, the anniversary is in December, I usually revisit these photographic archives, and these are archives where he cut himself out 2 years before he took his own life. And it's a way of kind of communing with what remains. And it's become a new ritual. It originally was a scary thing that I was doing to really kind of like confront this archive that I was avoiding. And now it becomes like a new friend, right? A new family member. So I'll read this series. I was really fascinated in less who is not here, but more of who we used to be, right? So through the aperture of the camera of this wedding that we went to, my uncle's wedding, probably in 1990, maybe 1993 or 1994, I don't even remember these people very much anymore. And they're very different from the people who exist in the world today. And so I began to kind of trace back what these photographic kind of markers have really kind of, what's the word? What it called forth for me through memory. And I began to really think about what happens if I use the marker of the body of the past to convey what I contain and know about them in the present. This all sounds very abstract, but I'll read it and then maybe you'll have some kind of experience with it. And I'm excited to hear from you, which is to say, we are going to do a Q&A after Ching and I talk, and I hope you won't be shy to ask questions. The side. I left this in. He who shoots the photograph has been standing here all along, standing there beside us in the nick of time, having arrived just after triggering the clock. One solitude stands beside others, capturing this moment capturing this moment for posterity, for he himself, a man named Sung, whose son removed himself from frames, cutting into them and all around. 2 clocks, nicking the wire, the vanishing wick. Quick, everyone say. At the beach, she had asked me to tell her how this boy makes me feel. She who found his empties, found his body. Was he finally sleeping after all these years? How did he feel? What did she feel? The love of my life, she wrote to nobody, no one, not even herself. Before the camera, she is smiling, using her finger as a knife. The lengths she'll go to get them to straighten, to get her children to listen. How it is a battle, a war, what she has done, what she has to do. It is emptiness inside that holds what she wants. I kept as still as I could, always looking for a way out. All I can say is what happened, with and then without. Without words, I have nothing I can say. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to the second piece now, which is a series. Oh, it looks like it doesn't see it when I switch it over. So I'll stop and reshare. I never know how to seamlessly do that in the same application. Okay, so here we are again. This is a series called Cape Disappointment, which you all might know well in Washington State if you are familiar with Washington State. It's where I spent a lot of time as well. Yeah, so this is an exercise in listening, and when one eye is closed, when the visual aperture is closed, what comes into, right, the aural, the AURAL aperture. Cape Disappointment. In rising, articulation of the spine leaves one open for a slitting. Daisies thread tread marks in the road. I cannot trace my body, so press it against grass. From afar, I recognize the shivering seal pup on the trail, dreading blood on the beak, pecking at a beached carcass, a stumble. Nausea arrives like showers sweeping across the sandbar, toes edged at the jetty. How our bodies move us and how we move our bodies. How do middle-aged orphans fight over their mother's funeral rites? By watching a bruise form from one body by a brother. The unexpected flush of beach strawberries early in the season. Entrails on the sand and strewn carnations bobbing in the surf. As a child, I learned from refugees how to jettison that which does not fuel. To shuck a clam, the crow drops it mid-flight. From afar, I watch my aunts and uncles articulate their talents. Grief, like fog, measures our meaningless hours. Before language assembles the tongue, instinct prompts a body. It takes several pecks, and the snowy plover chick secures its insect. It takes many to become one. Fingering the hem of mother's lilac dress, a dragonfly holds on. Upon arrival, haven't we already headed toward departure? I'm just gonna stop there in this series and pass the baton over to Ching-In. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you so much, Diana, for that rich offering. And thanks, Jen, for hosting our reading, Lauren, for all your work, and all of you for being here. And also sending lots of care to Claudia. So right now I'm on Cherokee and Yuchi lands. Diana mentioned that in the Eastern time zone. So I'm kind of out of my normal element, which I think is fitting for what we're talking about. So I'm thinking a lot about openings and gaps. Well, I'm on this residency in North Carolina, and it's the first time I've traveled far during the pandemic, and there's large gaps of time in the day where I don't have access to the internet or to phone, and I'm kind of like left to my own devices. One of the things that I've been thinking about is a few months ago, I learned from a doctor that I have something growing inside me that I'll need to get excised. And that was a very strange feeling to learn that my body is producing something that is kind of like its own monster. So that's what I've been thinking about gaps and fissures and openings. And so this is what I've been working on while I've been here. I don't know how much you can see it, but I will show you. I'm going to read from it, but I'll read a not doctored version. I've been cutting it up and like patching it back together and trying to make sense of this experience. So that's what I'm going to read. And I'm going to share my screen as well. And it's called Growth. I'll just ask you to tell me if you cannot see it. Can books see it? Okay. Growth. 1. Once again, Dr. A green stalk. Tall bean, skilled with cutting device. Do you want incision? She asks, all marmalade. I don't know what it looks like to be stomach forward, to make decisions based on gut. Ghost baby tumor clanging from inside, clamoring for tendon, hunk, and marrow. 2. I never remember my dreams, but last night I hid under green thorn bush while I heard you over pants and exhalations of other feet. In one moment, there and then elsewhere in heartbeat, I only saw square of your shirt or flash, blur. I wonder if my breathing would give me up, if that rising and falling would give. Why did you stop talking? Question mark. I fixate on green thorn, stub part of sunny day, which ends outdated among us. I can't say terrible, avoid direct line. I see clear in one patch, but do not want to describe steel and staccato, round and round again into sudden air. No frame, but grip of chest. Of course, a body not there, minute passing each second, a biting down crawl. How did you hide in bush without getting hurt by thorns? Question mark. I peel again and again, zip my mouth. Ant below my skin keeps walking and walking. I want to wail, but bite myself again and again. Spit grows between teeth and I fear involuntary motion. Be clear, a weapon. Flash but no memory, only feet. Hold breath, hid green. Torn thorn, no rise, hide chest. 3. One doctor stalks the marmalade. She craves sticky stomach, oozing with inside ghost. She sucks marrow and orders another knife for table. 4. The mothers and aunts erect bewildered cyclone of scars in town center. We sit on humid ground, electrified at what questions sequester, what signals loom. In next narrative, what if I scramble trial and error? Question mark. What if I strike down and scare each tornado? Question mark. 5. For the last few months, I noticed that I am often hungry shortly after eating. I jokingly ask my partner, where's my tapeworm? Question mark. My parasite that I need to feed. 6. Each nostril harbors ravenous universe, packed with cutaways not kept. Outlet has no idea what connected and why, questions shut beside. What a stewed mouth, walled in twine, carried and how. What advice will never grow inside me, stalking own shadow. 7. Growth and fester, though I marvel at what's living. Carrier became base of own heartbeat, to harbor variant under own wingbeat and alloy. A parcel giver, dear doctor, beware of dissemination. I move here to escape narrow hallway, life pushed into eerie. I don't want to be normal. Insect, you are incubator of many feet, hurricane of many eyes. I thought I had ingested you as annotation. Footnote, saliva, salt. Pyrocumulonimbus this time. Another blossom into smog, mushroom in our lungs. We measure out each intake around us, looking for slippery soot, realizing we leave one disaster for another changing dial. Finally, I place down my skin, trap air in mouth, singing to relieve what carries into soil and plant. What alligator will wait in each corner in land where there are no alligators? 8. I ask around with generality about cravings and keeping a record. My father tells me about his mother who was cut too. Not sure though where she stood on cravings. 9. The doctors dream again of multiplying. Original missing and twin calls me in for emotional laboring. To incise, question, and drip its ominous nature. To be held hostage. In emergency, no one can provide clear answers about what follows. A body may not be there, but demands. 10. Inside me then lining, silver, tweaked from own small wonder. Inside me then a river to be crossed repeatedly in multiple succession, searching for exact spot of change. 11. In future, wide path through vessel where she used to lay, soaking up loam and algae, blood and drain. 12. If bridge, I must cross and settle into like boat. If plain face could be worse. If earnest, soothing liquid, muted fire going out slowly. If branch over path, she went through quickly, tail wagging without waiting for me to crash through. 13. Comfort kernel within kernel, almost invisible to outside skin as horizon. Truth is, they're not touching. Relationship of proximity, but not abundance. Nest, I dreamt you lair instead of kind. I dreamt you sticky with residue which could not be rinsed off. Linings, intestine, clean sheet. Messages then, but I am still not clear about procedure. Again, a time when we look up and widen, we make ourselves hollow, stretch our nostrils in practice. 14. Uniform wants a skin assigned for protection. You must take care for how it grows, incorporates surroundings, watches from perch. Once a skin encounters infectious agents, she might transform to radiant muscle. 15. The doctors frown on cravings for inside ghost. She is only stomach without decision-making privilege. She's consideration for excision, pipeline, or incinerator. 16. My muscle embedding its ghost, twisting flower, singing aunt song. 17. Yet if you disagree with my profession, how we soothe talk in flat tone, yet you ask more and more blue questions, pretty loophole which we can't escape from. A whirling never return, to shut door never partially open, question mark, or stuck mid-cycle despite notation. 18. Dystopia, the perch was a nest, hidden linings entwined with messages meant only for specific eyes, thought of as impassable, solid wall of angry muscle, which could only be weakened by too much shoving from masses. Agents, a string from east to west so gossamer you might miss in position. Muscle puckers, wanes, a red blanket sky, not to forget, like throat closed for cleaning. Suddenly to see metal flakes thudding on hard dirt. You've become hard nub, almost jerk and jab, fry and quake. 19, misplacing teething bud in own pot, growing out orbit, a freshly laid grass to bed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ching-In. Let me place myself next to you on screen. There we are. Hello, my heart is breaking. Thank you for sharing about what happened at the doctor and this work in which you transmute that encounter with what you're fathoming, right? Both in the body and outside the body. As I was listening, I was thinking a lot about Well, so many things. There's so many things I want to ask you about. I think the first thing I want to touch upon, perhaps, because I've been thinking about it too as I go through my own work, but a kind of, what's the word? You use the word, I thought a lot about disaster in your work, especially like cyclone, right? There's natural disasters of the environment, which I'm thinking about too when I was on the shoreline in Washington State, but also there's a way in which there's aberrant occurrences which happen within the landscape of the body. And in my case, I'm thinking a lot about what's happening within like the archive of the family, right? Within the family as a landscape. And I guess I was wondering if only if you feel comfortable to share, how you're thinking about what's happening both, outside of the body in the environment, but also inside the internal environment. And you don't have to go into the specifics of, the speaker's body or so forth, but like, I mean, to think about inside versus outside and this, which is to say like, I see so much in your work here, a larger ecosystem at work, right? From the plants with its protective barriers. We have a thorny bush. We also have an alligator, makes me think about their skin and then also the landscape. Sorry, I'm just kind of rambling, but these are just things that are running through my head as I was reading and listening along.
Thank you, Diana. It's really great to share this conversation with you. And I'm really, so the work I'm reading is really new. And I have been working on a large project called Breathing in a Time of Disaster, which started when I was living in Houston after Hurricane Harvey in response. And it's funny that you're pointing out the outer inner conversation, because I think all the time I've been here, so I've been here for like about a week and a half, I'm like, is this part of that? Is this, this feels very like internal. And, I do see it as like kind of stretching from what the other project is. So it's interesting to hear you say that, because I think we're living in such a time, of, I just feel like I'm living in a looming apocalypse. Not that, it wasn't before, but it feels like even more so now. And I love the connection you're making with your own work, because one of the things that
Oh, Chingy, I think it accidentally got muted.
oh no, how much?
For 5 seconds.
Okay, I was saying that I'm glad that you're linking it to the way you're thinking about landscape and disaster in your own work in terms of the archive of the family. I think one thing that I admire about your work is the way that you're using the shape and kind of that friction, the tension between even the words that are not whole, or the image that has gaps, and then but you're not reading it that way. And then it was very stark, the difference with the second piece in terms of the landscape. And it did make me think of being at a shore, in terms of the little lapping of those lines. So I appreciated the range that you showed.
Yeah, speaking of, I mean, this is, I feel like, going to be a mutual fan person session, because I adore your work and how you use, I think I saw you at AWP in 2018. I forget what little bookstore it was in Portland. I think it was with Ching-In Chen. But when you read, it was such a somatic experience. Like your body was this, like a musical instrument, right, through which the sheet music of the words contracted, expanded, and closed. And I felt like I saw a lot of, I would translate, I mean, I'm obsessed with the word of aperture. So I'm not trying to bring it to the topic, that's not intentional, but I think you had the word zip in your piece, and thinking about enclosing but also opening. And of course the word incision makes us think about that too, and all the moments where the word skin appears. And I was thinking too of like the the dilation and contraction, which also relates to growth and the waning, the puckering, right? That's it existing in work, but also like the layout in this brand new piece, which I'm so grateful that we get the privilege of experiencing. There's a way in which it's almost like a prose format, and then every now and then you have these kind of fragments with like a literal gap within the line, the caesura. And I was curious if you could talk, and I'll chat too, like, because I'm curious to hear about like form as in container, right? Like, I mean, in the reading, we have like our own body as container for the work, but then the page is container. In the first series, like the photograph thing that I was working with, maybe this is so cliche. I feel like it's such like a teenage person thing to say, but it's okay. I would love to be a teenager again. But I love Bruce Lee, and I love that Bruce Lee quote about being the teacup, right? Like, you pour it into teacup. So I thought about like quite literally, like what happens if I'm composing as that is the liquid, that is the tea, and I'm pouring it into these bodies, and maybe your teacup is a funny shape. Like I have a swan cup, but like the liquid doesn't know. The liquid is it just exists. And so this is maybe a response to your observation that I didn't read it like with the fragments. And I wanted to have a fluidity in thinking about the bodies that are still intact in real life. And I know you see me read some earlier series with this photographic archive, which I very much read, the Rupture. And I wanted to be really careful about not translating that into those who are still alive, and yeah, so I don't know. And then like, yes, in the shoreline, I was thinking very like horizontal, but I didn't want to turn my page to landscape. I was thinking too of how ephemeral it all is, but how cyclical. It was funny because I was at Cape Disappointment, and every point that I stopped to walk, whether I was above or on the shore, there were these carnations. And I was like imagining in I was like, did somebody like propose? Like, and then like drop flowers? Like, I don't know. And they're fresh, right? They weren't wilted. And I was trying to imagine. So like, I mean, yeah, carnation appears. But I'm thinking about how like when something is bobbing in the surf, it goes away and it comes back. And there's that's the natural rhythm. I mean, yeah, I don't know science, but it like relates to the moon and like the gravitational pulls. I don't know anything about tides. I'm not a fishing person. But the body also has these cycles and rhythms, and what happens when there is something unusual that's interacting, I mean, and yeah, and when it becomes parasitic versus all the good things that are in our body, like the good bacteria. I'm thinking about our gut microbiome. Sorry, such a rambling question. But yeah, I'm thinking about all of those things.
Well, you mentioned the form, and I was trying to draw out I have been trying to do lyric essay and get away from, I think I've been trying to get away from the familiar, which is for me the fragment and the compression, but I can't completely get away from it. And I have been obsessed with the act of cutting, probably because of what's going on, but also because I think right now I live in a really, well, not right now, but when I'm in my normal habitat, I live in a really small house. So I can't put things up on the wall and I feel very compressed. And then like during the pandemic, we've all been like kind of trapped in a really small space. So here I'm like, oh, I'm like here by myself, and I can put things on the wall, and I can like, so I've like been kind of like cutting and rearranging. And I think in the pandemic, I've been really stuck on my computer, right? Here I have been like going back to non-computerized ways of working. And I think it has changed, the shape of what I'm working on in ways that I find interesting. Like I think that there are rearrangements that I wouldn't have found otherwise. So I guess my question to you, and then we can open up to the audience, is how do you choose where you cut? How do you choose what to leave in and what to excise?
Yeah,
Sorry,
this is a
question of cutting, but
Oh yeah, no worries. I think about, oh my God, I could tell you so many stories about scissors, but we're not here for that. Um, this is a great question. And also, I want to just say really quickly, when you were sharing your notebook, I think the blurred background blurred the notebook. So I could see that there were some blue patches so it was helpful to hear you describe that you've been doing this like tactile, hands-on composition, but it's also, writing is very much for me a form of collage, right? Whether I'm literally collaging or I'm like sorting through the list of all the things in my head. And actually, this maybe will sound really shocking, but like, I don't, oh man, I hesitate to say it because it's not true, but I don't revise. I compose really slowly and I don't really go back to cut because as I'm like even typing the word, it's like I'm hovering over for the next, and then I'm playing out all these possibilities before I arrange it. It's like my parents were very this is like such an SET word. Pecunious, like they were really stingy with money and resources. So as a kid, everything I knew how much everything cost. So I'd be very careful about how much I used, because I didn't want to waste. And so when I write, I mean, the computer doesn't care if I'm backspacing, but I'm very like, it's like I'm filtering right through my hands. And so there's a cutting that happens in my mind, but that cutting is more of like, what am I gonna gather in this hand for this moment? When you were describing your tactile process, but now you have some space to unfurl and to put things up. I was thinking about beloved poet Meme Bersenbrugge, who described in an interview, and also I got to ask her about this. She takes these long walks in like New Mexico, right? And she used to live in Alaska, which is very much a horizontal landscape as well. And she would take Polaroids, she would pick up flowers or, rocks. And then at home, I was like, who does this for fun? But she would read like theory for fun, philosophy for fun. Not me. But she would like take pictures of it and then cut out quotes that she liked. So kind of like, when I used to scrapbook, right? I would have a bulletin board when I was younger. And then before she starts to write, she puts everything out on a table. And I feel like I'm doing that in my brain. But since I learned her process, I got like an Instax camera. And so I'm now doing this tactile thing too. And so I'm not doing it on my literal digital page, but I'm doing it on the canvas that is my table. Right. Or we might do it on our walls. I just am scared of poking holes in the walls. I guess I can use probably painter's tape. But Mei says she'll like pick up a piece that calls to her. So it's also kind of a divination, right? Like she like is drawn to a particular item. It's like her own Ouija board. Yeah. Okay. That's the metaphor. And then she'll turn to another thing and then begins to put them together. And that draft is very different from the later draft of the poem, because originally it's just like, oh, her mind, it's like tuning into the intuition of the mind, the creative mind. And then later she goes back to write or fill or replace, right? Replace the markers in their page. And so I think that was a weird way of me saying, like, I kind of do something, a hybrid of that now too. Is that what it's like for, I guess, we did want to turn to the audience, but is that what it's like when you're like putting things up on the walls? Are you working with like the materials that you have around you as well? Okay.
I'm also, I'm someone who like writes a little bit every day, but I need to, I haven't been able to really revise deeply during the pandemic because I haven't had headspace or like space. And so I've just been saving up all these little bits. And so when I was here, I forced myself to go very slowly. Like what I've been doing is I've been excising all the proper nouns, all the verbs. And then I've been trying to listen to intuition. So what you're saying, like kind of like a Ouija board and like putting things up and like kind of like my process before was like smushing things together, which didn't necessarily have a relationship. And then, basically I'm taking, the two things that I'm obsessed with are, I used to live in the desert in California, in Riverside, because that's where I got my MFA. And I grew up near the ocean. So when I got there, I was like, what is this? I don't know what this is. This is like, it's gonna kill me. The forest, like, not the forest. I'm in the forest now. Like the desert's gonna kill me. So I had to make this relationship to it. And then, yeah, and then when I was in Houston, like dealing with the hurricane and the aftermath. So like these are the two landscapes that are kind of the opposite that I'm merging together. And I'm trying to do it really slowly. I think kind of what you're saying, because, you know, like I'm not taping things down, because once I tape them down here, I can't print it again. So like I have to be really careful. And I have to like decide that that's really what I want to do. So it's been lovely, because it's been really different than the way that I've worked in the past.
Yeah, I can feel it. There's like a, what's the word? There's almost like a buzzing in this new work, not only because of the content matter, but the way in which now I'm hearing the process in which you compose them. I love it. I love that we got to talk about process and hear about it. And I'm going to try some of the things that you're thinking, like, because I'm also in weird landscapes too. You know, I used to live in high mountain desert in Denver, but I'm from Los Angeles by the ocean. And now I'm landlocked in a really hilly place, so I can't see beyond, 100 feet anywhere, because it's all hills and lots of trees, which is great. But I'm also like, what? I had to get a dehumidifier, like what? I don't understand that. Yeah, I mean, I could talk to you forever, and I'm excited to maybe hang out with you next time I'm back, when we're on the same coast. I think we should turn, to the audience. I know we only have a few minutes. Oh, great. We have one from Cliff. I'll read it here. Okay, he says, fascinating. Does the use of digital tools change the speed of this production? And then the relentless blinking of the cursor. Yeah, so I guess use of digital tools and speed of production. I can jump in here. I can say it's a lot faster to, what's the word, render work digitally, versus like if we had to print stuff out and arrange it, on a page. Like I'm thinking here of like Susan Howe's kind of sculptural text, right, things which she has described as, literally like printing it out and then cutting it up and scotch taping it and then using a Xerox. These are her, the product placement is really, these are the words that she used, using a Xerox machine, to kind of make these objects. But, if I scan them and put them into Illustrator or something, I can quickly rearrange them. But I think there's something too about the slowness of doing it and the intentionality, and the preciousness of it. Like with a instant image, I can't like delete it. I have to use another piece of film, right? So like I try to think a lot about how I'm going to compose the capturing of that shot, or yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of deviating, but I'd love to hear, Ching-In, if you had a response to this too.
I think for me, definitely it has. And I think I'm a longhand person. So if I get stuck, I have to, and for a long time, I refused to compose with the computer. But now I've gotten used to it, especially with the smushing process. It makes the smushing easier. But one of the things that I've been doing, I've been both reading and listening to books. And what I've realized is, they're two really different experiences. And a lot of the interesting textual things that happen can't be rendered in voice. And so I've been kind of double reading. And for me, that's been also a way that I've been thinking about this work. I didn't do it quite so much tonight, but I sometimes will read against what I put down on the page to render a different experience. and it also teaches me about the piece and like the journey of it. So.
Wait, can you tell me a little bit more when you say double reading? Could you describe that a little bit?
Oh yeah, so so one of the books I read is E.J. Koh's The Magical Language of Others. It's a really great memoir, really highly recommend it. And one of the interesting things about the book is that it incorporates letters in Korean, but well, with some translation from the mother of letters, you know, and I first listened to the book and she's the one that's reading it. So it felt like really intimate, like she was in my ear and I was like walking, I was moving while I was kind of when I was reading this book, but I couldn't see the letters, right? So it became a wholly different experience when I looked at the book and I was able to see the letters. But then, you know, you can also see there are things that she just couldn't read, like the Korean with the English translations from the mother, which aren't actually quite, I guess. I mean, if you read EJ's translation note, it's like what the mother thought in terms of the word, but maybe not the word that would be translated.
Oh yeah, it reminds me of analogously when people watch a movie and they're like, but the book was better, you know, or I mean, not that we're privileging here either the audiobook or the physical book, but the way in which our imagination can manifest the intimacy of what we hear versus sometimes the difficult translation to the oral, the inexpressible of what appears on the page. Yeah. Oh, thank you for, I remember seeing about EJ's book, but now I definitely have to get it. We didn't overlap for our MFA at Columbia. She was a year after. And so I think of her really fondly because she was another person from LA, like another Asian woman from LA, you know, and people were like, you're the same. And I was like, that's racist. Because there weren't very many, you know, Asian women in that poetry program. Okay, we're not here to talk about that. So question from Amanda says, Diana, when you were at the Cape with your eyes closed, can you say something about your use of images in your work and using words in their sonic nature? And then Ching-In, can you say more about the lyric essay nature of this work and the process or content? Yeah, thank you, Amanda. Images. Yeah, so there's this, I think this kind of relates to what we were just talking about audiobook and text. When I'm hearing in the world around me and I'm not able to see where it's coming from, I have to rely on my mind to generate a map or a kind of image, right? Like photographic image of what I see, but it's more like it has the logic of dream, right? Because things can shift around. There's a flexibility to things as I course correct or move things. And that has really informed how I write on the page, right? It makes me think, because I think before it was just like, I'm trying to describe the bottle. I'm trying to describe a bottle on the floor. Now I'm not trying to describe a bottle on the floor. Now I'm just like, it's more of like, well, what enables for that image that maybe I want to express to exist? This is getting maybe weird and metaphysical, but I'm thinking more about the larger, I think, kind of context and how I'm not going to focus on a specific thing, but all the little things that comprise it. Does that make sense? The room, gravity, container, materials, you know, air pressure, and all of that stuff. But yeah, Chingy, I'll let you, yes, take this next question.
Okay, so it's funny, Amanda, that you are in the room. So Amanda and I know each other because we did this residency in Cape Cod. It feels like a million years ago, also by the ocean, with Mina Alexander. And this is so funny because, and actually it's related to your question, because right before I came here, I found the folder of the work from that time with Mina's like handwriting scribbled all over it. And she was having us like go in the ocean and like write, you know, like diary entries. And so I was like, I looked at it and I was like, I need to bring this with me. I don't know why. And when I've been here, I've been like, I need to, it is kind of been a little bit diaristic. And like my impulse is like, I need to grow this. So like, this is against my normal fragment thing. I mean, not totally, but like, I'm trying to grow the work, right? I'm trying to like lengthen it out, but then obviously keep cutting it and then making it smaller, and then I'll like try to regrow it again. And I mean, and yeah, it is like mirroring what's happening, I guess in my body, but it's really funny that you're here in the room because I was thinking like, and because it was a long time ago, and it was, you know, it's like not something that comes across my desk every day. So, you know, you must have summoned the Mina energy.
What a confluence. I love it. Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you, Ching-In. Thank you to myself. Thank you to Claudia that I was imagining here with us, you know, in a multiverse thread. And thank you to you all for sharing in your afternoon as we move into evening. It's evening over here on the East Coast. Thank you again to Jen for hosting, and hi, Lauren, I see you, and all the other rectangles here in the Zoom space. Yeah, be well as well as we can. And yeah, collage, put stuff up, be containers, listen, I don't know, all the things.
Yeah, I hope we'll see some of you next weekend. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen, Lauren, and I'm glad to have had this conversation with you, Diana. Don't be straight.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Diana. Thank you, Ching-In. It's been wonderful to have you here and just have some insight into your process and your conversation, your relationship, and your influences on each other. Thank you so much for being here and sharing with us. And yes, look forward to seeing more of you as Lit Fuse weekend is coming upon us. And thank you all, everyone else, for joining. Hope to see you next weekend at Lit Fuse, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Hi, Cliff.
Thank you.